Welcome to the All Out Leadership Podcast, hosted by Pastor Erik, where each episode is uniquely designed to help you live all out by bringing you practical leadership from a biblical perspective delivered in 10 minutes or less. So whether you're a business leader, serving in ministry, or simply looking to grow in your leadership, this podcast is for you. Before we dive into this week's topic, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and download the show notes at eriklawson.com/podcast. And while you're at it, feel free to share the content on social media. Now, let's join Pastor Erik for this week's conversation.
Welcome to another edition of the All Out Leadership Podcast. We are continuing with David fleeing from Absalom, his son, who threw a coup, and now David has been fleeing for his life. We're going to pick up in 2 Samuel chapter 18, verse 2. And the king said to the people, I will also surely go out with you myself. But the people answered, You shall not go out, for if we flee away, they will not take care about us. Nor if half of us die, will they care about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us now, for you are now more help to us in the city. Then the king said to them, Whatever seems best to you, I will do. So the king stood beside the gate, and all the people went out by hundreds and by thousands. I want to talk about receiving advice, getting advice, receiving advice. What we see in David is this continual pattern that even though he's king, even though he's known as a man after God's own heart, even though he's a man of significant achievements such as killing Goliath, we see that he is still humble of heart to where he will listen to advice and receive advice from his team. So as a leader, how well do you do at listening to the advice, the opinion, the feedback from your team? Some leaders do really well. For some people, this is their Achilles heel. They just don't seem to listen to feedback and advice. So I'm going to just give you 3 things that I tend to do inside of my own mind to help me settle in and to sit there and listen, to get advice, to get feedback. Number 1, at times, I just got to suspend my personal feelings because usually with most decisions that I'm making, I kind of already have a set of feelings that I showed up with. I kind of already have a preconceived idea of how I want a scenario to go or what solution I want to implement to that problem, what I want to say to that particular person or that situation. And so I have to just kind of sometimes in my mind just visualize a little pause button, and I'm just going to pause my feelings. I'm going to pause my preconceived ideas because it's really hard to hear something outside of the box, something outside of my own preconceived ideas, unless I just hit pause. So the second thing in pause, and this will let you know whether or not you actually hit pause, is can you listen without interrupting? Now this, I'm going to be honest, this is really hard for me because the moment somebody gives me something, I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. And I want to either defend myself, defend my position. I want to, change directions. I want to take over basically because I'm a leader. That's what I love to do. I like to be in charge. Don't judge me because if you're judging me, you're not a leader. Because if you're a leader, you know exactly what I'm talking about because you're like, yep, I get it. That's me. All right. So I have to stop and just go, I'm not going to interrupt. I'm going to let them complete their thought, even though it's taking way longer than I want to allow for. Hurry up, please. Then don't immediately dismiss it if it seems to hit you wrong. You know the statement, and it's a cliche, and it's a cliche because it's true. If you do what you've always done, you'll continue to get what you've always gotten. Pretty much when I look at whatever I'm dealing with as a leader, it's there because of me. Somehow it's a reflection of my leadership, the trickleonomics of who I am and how I lead and culture that I've created or tolerated or allowed. So when I look at a particular situation, often it's there because of me. So if I want something different than me, what I've already allowed or created, then it's going to require something different than me. So anytime I hear a new thought, I hear a new perspective, I get a fresh angle on something, it automatically hits me wrong because it's not me. If it was me, I would have already thought of it. So this is a difficult process to get to the point where I can go, how can I think outside of the box? How can I think outside of me, what I might naturally do to get a better idea than I would have come up on my own? Again, the Bible talks about this a lot. In a multitude of counselors, there is victory. So important to get advice and listen to the team. Now, in this particular case, David's team really gave him great advice. Their advice is, look, David, there are certain things only you can do as the king, and that's worth 10,000 of us. So we need to keep you doing what only you can do, and we'll go do what you don't need to be doing. And so it was really great leadership advice from his team, and David did a good job to listen. So let's talk to those that are giving advice to their leader or to someone else for a moment. David's team gave good advice. How good is the advice that you're giving? So I'm going to give you kind of a little 3-point checklist when you go to give advice to your leader. And this is so helpful. And I'm just sharing this from personal experience that I've learned the hard way. All right. Number one, is this a fact or is this a feeling? A lot of times people will go, hey, and they'll throw out an idea. They're presenting it as facts when in actuality, it's really just a bunch of feelings that have no facts to substantiate what they feel. So if you're presenting facts, great. But if you're presenting something and it's really not rooted inside of facts, just be honest and go, look, I don't have any facts to substantiate this, but here's how I feel about this particular situation. And that's okay. It's okay to tell how you feel, but just say it's what you feel and don't disguise it as facts. I've been, quote, misled many times, intentionally and unintentionally, by well-meaning staff and some not well-meaning staff who are no longer here, by the way, because they presented a bunch of things as facts when they weren't actually facts and they were actually feelings. So I'm making a decision based on what I'm told are facts, but actually weren't facts. Now, my bad was I should have followed up to validate the facts. So I didn't do that sometimes. So my bad, and I've learned, and now I go substantiate the facts. But I've been misled at times to make decisions that I regretted later because I was presented feelings as facts. So there we go. Is this objective or is this an opinion? Now, it may sound similar to feelings, but feelings and an opinion aren't necessarily always the same thing. So when you are sharing an idea, another great thing to say is, hey, this is how I feel. But another way to package it really just might be, look, here's a perspective, or I got an opinion. It may not be the best opinion and it's not the only opinion, but I got an opinion. And so I appreciate when someone's telling me it's actually an opinion versus it's an objective truth. This is an objective reality. Well, no, it just might be your opinion. So if it's a feeling, state the fact that I feel this way. If it's just your opinion or your perspective, state that, because it helps the leader that you're trying to give advice to or the person you're giving advice to. It helps them know how to filter when they're getting ready to make this decision. Also, when you're presenting it, present it as an option, not the only option. There's a lot of times I've been told, this is what we need to do. We got to go out and buy this. And I've been sold certain things. I go, well, man, that's a lot of money. We need to go buy that? Yeah, we got to have it. Well, then I start to ask a bunch of questions. And then I come to find out there were 5 other options that were much cheaper, but this was just the one they wanted because it had all the bells and whistles. But I was presented it in such a way that it was a fact. It was like, you got to have this. This is the only one, and this is our only option. When you go to present to your leader something, and there are other options, you need to go, hey, here's a couple options. Option A, option B, option C. The way I describe it to my team, if you're presenting a purchase, give me 3 options. I want the Toyota Corolla, I want the Camry, and then I want the Lexus. All right, all made by the same company, but they all have different price points, and they all have different bells and whistles. So if I know, hey, here's what we could get with the Lexus, but here's what we could get by with the Camry, there are times I go, we need the Lexus, and there's times I go, no, we need the Camry because we don't need all these other bells and whistles. And so you make yourself look bad when you're only presenting one option when there were other options. Because let's say your leader acts on that, and then they find out that they could have saved $5,000 or $10,000 or $100,000 or $10 million more, and you didn't let them know that, that is not going to help you on your performance review. You actually look better and smarter and well educated as a staff member when you go, hey, here's a couple options that I found. That way you can make a wise decision. So share all the options. I like what Andrew Jackson said. It's a poor mind that can only think of one way to spell a word. I like that because I can't spell. So at least he respected my spelling inabilities. I can think of a dozen ways to spell different words. So there you go. There's more than one option how to get something done. Next, help your leader do what only they can do. What you see inside of this is the team recognized that David was doing things he shouldn't be doing, and they came to him and gave him permission to stop doing those. They said, let us do that, so that they could free David up to do what only he can do. So the question is this: are you the type of team member that is taking plates, taking weights off your leader, or are you the person who's bringing the entire buffet of problems to them? So do you add or do you take away? A good leader is taking away from their leader things they don't need to do so they can focus only on what they can do. Which leads me with the last point. If you're a leader who's helping take away problems and getting your leader into the sweet spot of what only they can do, bring solutions, not just problems. Part of every good leader's job is to identify problems, but secondly, find solutions to those problems, and then find a variety of solutions, more than one option on how to solve that. And then present that to your leader in such a way that it requires the least amount of effort for them to make a quality decision. My favorite personally is multiple choice. So if I get a memo and it says, hey, we got such and such, I got a summary of a problem, and then I see a summary of here's our options. Option 1, we could do A, B, C. Option 2, we could do A, B, C. Option 3, we could do A, B, C. Circle which one you like. It didn't take a lot of effort for me to go, oh, wow, this is the best option. Go ahead and do this. And so that was somebody who took an hour off my plate of me having to think, me having to make some phone calls, having to Google something and figure out what the options are. Look, if you don't bring solutions to the leader, and the leader is always having to solve your problems, at the end of the day, you got to ask, why do they need you? You're hired to be a problem solver, and if you aren't solving problems, you might be the bigger problem. Okay, I know that hurt. We're going to move on to another great podcast next week.
Thank you for joining us on the All Out Leadership Podcast. We hope you gained new biblical insight that challenged you to grow in your leadership. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we would love your help in getting the content out farther. You can help by subscribing to the podcast at eriklawson.com/podcast and telling others about it. Next week, Pastor Erik will be back with another episode. So until then, we hope you have a great week being an all-out leader.